And so it's going to be a short working week. It was a holiday Monday, Tuesday, in some parts of Southern Africa. Welcome to it. This is Midweek Party Downhill to the weekend. Stay connected to Africa and to the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Listen or watch anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za, on the Channel Africa mobile app, on SABC Plus, or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. Join the conversation on social media. Follow us at Channel Africa on Facebook and Channel Africa One on all our social media handles. Don't miss the story shaping our continent and beyond. Channel Africa first with the African story globally. Stand by for Soul Stage. Let me welcome Kovini Moodley. He is an anti-bullying mentor, social impactor, and founder of Boss Brains in South Africa. Kovini Moodley is a governance, risk, and compliance expert with over 18 years of corporate experience. She's held senior roles at Deloitte, Accenture and Discovery Health, and was named IRMSA Risk Manager of the Year in 2024. She is also a SAICA Brand Ambassador and recognized thought leader on governance, ethics, and organizational culture. She's the founder of Boss Brains of South Africa, digital advocacy and empowerment platform with over 100,000 followers. Since launching the platform in 2020, Kovini has used her voice to raise awareness on workplace bullying, psychological safety, and social justice. Kovini, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited about being able to lend my voice to the show and really hope to inspire those that need a little inspiration these days.
Yes, of course. It is Women's Month, so we celebrate you as a successful and inspiring woman in 2026. And by the way, congratulations to you in 2024. You were named IRMSA Risk Manager of the Year. How did you feel?
Oh, it was amazing. One of the professional highlights of my career, certainly, to be, recognized by IRMSA, which stands for the Institute of Risk Management South Africa, and just to be surrounded by such phenomenal excellence. It was a phenomenal experience, such a great experience.
17 years working in top firms like Deloitte, Accenture, Discovery Health. What did you see in corporate governments that made you realize bullying is really something that needs to be taken care of? Were you bullied yourself?
I want to start it off by saying that I am a governance, risk, and compliance specialist. So based on my skills of almost 2 decades, what I've spent a lot of time doing is analyzing various corporate cultures and being able to identify gaps, being able to suggest solutions, and also being able to, identify employee sentiment, which I think is just so important and we don't speak about it enough. But that's really my background. And I think through understanding my background and the need for governance in South Africa, be it public or the private sector, I think it was very, very important to note that when governance fails, there are a lot of things that fail with it within an organization. If your employees stop believing in you or stop believing in their leadership because what your leadership says and what your leadership does is 2 very different things, that's the first sign that you have got an employee force that really isn't going to be very aligned with the tone at the top, as they call it, or your, ethical behaviors that our employees look up to when it comes to leadership. And that's really where, the gap of corporate bullying has become quite a big topic. And the reason it's became a big topic is because, yes, unfortunately, I did experience it once in my 20-year experience career. But more importantly, it wasn't just about me experiencing it and moving on. I found that the more that I were able to talk to individuals, connect with women, find out what they're doing. I would find that at every table that I sit at, every forum that I sit at, this would somehow be a common theme that would join the table around the fact that women are really not feeling very empowered within workspaces. And that's really where my journey started, to say, what can I do to impact and inspire those that may be, feeling trapped or despondent to go to work every single day.
Yeah. Well, Kovini, it's unfortunate that you did experience bullying. And as you're saying, it's something that really needs to be nicked in the bud. But when does it become bullying? Is there such a thing as fooling around at work, or, people must just keep their distance?
Yeah, I think, the law is quite clear in South Africa. There's a code of good practice, which all employer groups are actually bound by. So it is a legal, set of rules that says, for example, an employee must work within a space that is safe. And safety encompasses psychological, of course, physical, and emotional. So that's really where the law starts to guide you around workplace bullying. And workplace bullying versus, fooling around or just a one-time incident. The Harassment Act defines it as a set of behaviors that are perpetuated over a period of time. And the intention of it is to demean, belittle, humiliate, or embarrass someone. So that's the definition of it. It's a little hard to prove if it happens just one time, but I guess that is where it becomes important to make sure that you are keeping every single piece of evidence, you are keeping a notebook, and that you are protecting your career the best way that you can.
Yeah. So you also founded Boss Brains of South Africa and created the Corporate Journal series. What gap were you trying to fill for women in the South African workplace?
Yeah. Yes. I watched the corporate, Polygamist. I couldn't get through it all at one go, simply because there were some parts that were so deeply triggered within that series. So I had to do it in 2 parts. And I think I'm a very reflective person. I don't just see things in face value and forget about it. I think what was very, very important for me was to, remove any form of romantic background, which is sort of where it's set in, and use the principles, the structures, and all the similarity in terms of behaviors to liken to that of someone that, I've now named the corporate genasi, and people find it funny. But I think it's it's very much more about the control that we sometimes face within organizations, the humiliation, the gaslighting that, someone who often does not have the skill that you have, and you find yourself speaking up, you often find that is not well received. So it's subtle things. I think the thing about workplace bullying is that it is so subtle that, you don't want to come into the game too long. You don't want to be fooled and misled and, driven down a path where it gets as bad as where you're actually bullied out of the organization. And I promise you, companies come up with the most fascinating and innovative ways to do this. I coach young mentees, and the stories I've been hearing, I want to say some of them absolutely horrify me. In 2026, when we are talking about GBV being a crisis in South Africa by the highest powers, we are talking about women owning their power. And then we've got the concept of what is, now being termed corporate GBV, where it's not physical, but it's small little subtle attacks across your psychology, impacting your psychology, making you feel less than. And that's not really, I guess, a space that the women of South Africa have signed up to be in.
Yeah. Hey, Kovini, this is a very important conversation. Stay with us. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. What's on your mind tonight? Share your story with African Diaries. WhatsApp us on 083 288 6684 with Tich Mataz on Channel Africa.
Welcome back to the conversation. Tonight with me on Soul Stage is Kovini. And Kovini, as a chartered accountant and SAICA Brand Ambassador, how do you explain the link between ethics, governance, and employee safety to leaders who only worry about the numbers, you know?
There is no best practice company that I have worked for in South Africa, and believe me, I've worked across many different companies. And if a company chooses to focus only on the financial aspect and ignore the fact that your assets are, or your people are your assets, the biggest value drivers in your company, you're probably going to be very sorely disappointed. I think having worked for incredible companies like Deloitte and Accenture, it's really set, I want to say, the standard for me in terms of what good governance looks like, and ethical leadership and transparency. So I think it's very important that, we always talk about what the board does and then what the exco does. Your executive team within any company is the one that is responsible for setting the ethical tone, the accountability, the transparency. It is their obligation and their job to be able to define what is the risk appetite for a lot of things that happen in the company. For example, your risk appetite towards any kind of legal or compliance, things that could go wrong, should be zero. Your risk appetite for women being abused or harassed within a workspace should also be zero. The problem is that we have all these wonderful policy documents guiding everything. But the greatest problem, it appears, and not just in corporate in South Africa, is that there are human beings that do not want to follow the processes that have been defined, that have been set out. You often get situations where people feel more comfortable to do things their own way, and that often gets them into a lot of trouble. So I think your leadership is everything. If your leadership is embodying the values, where people can see that if someone's done something incorrect or done something fraudulent, there is a repercussion. But as an employee, when you look up and you see that people are doing some of the worst things and everyone's just turning away, that should be your first sign to know that you are unfortunately in a very toxic environment. Yeah. And I think it's important that when you find yourself there, you need to find a way to navigate that.
Okay. All right. Kovini, we're going to take another short little break. We just want to sort out something technical. We'll be right back, all right? Don't go nowhere.
Before they were leaders, they were simply women who refused to accept that they didn't have a voice.
When an African woman has been put under pressure, when she's been socialized into a certain space and she is being that woman, that doesn't mean that's all there is to her.
They carried an entire continent of women through voices that hummed and ululated, healed and nurtured, and voices that preserved culture and impacted wisdom. In their voices, we heard how beautiful Africa could be. This Women's Month, we celebrate the voices who came before. We stand tall and speak louder because you did. Channel Africa, the African perspective. The African perspective, told through lived experience. Only on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa, #1 radio station on the African continent. My guest is Kovini tonight, and some of the figures are staggering. You cite that 68% of women experience workplace harassment, but only 12% report it. Why do you think so many women suffer in silence?
I think the economy is certainly one of the factors. It is not easy to find a job in South Africa. That's part one. Part two is just the fear of being retaliated against, because that's a very real and lived experience, that you will be victimized, that you will have a target against your back, and that, you know, people that you often report then turn into even greater monsters, and make your life completely miserable. So I think really that is why a lot of women don't speak up. And the truth is, I don't expect everyone to speak up, but I do expect that if you've been documenting and you've got a great case, and you know, you've been following all the rules according to what is required from the code of good practice, that you should speak up. Because the one thing you want to do is, in an attempt to speak up, is to be able to change those processes so that it reflects correctly, so that the next person that comes after you, or the next generation that joins, is not faced with the same type of misery. I think we all understand that when you're at a job and you've got to give 8 hours of your life, and 8 daylight hours of your life, your afternoons, your mornings, you know, you can't do a lot of things during that time, like go to the doctor or whatever else happens during the day. I think it's important for us to also just self-reflect and say, is this environment
True. We all spend a lot of time at, we all spend a lot of time at work.
Make me feel worse. Yeah.
So how does workplace bullying impact?
Time at work.
Yes.
Sorry, I was going to say we spend more time at work actually than the people we actually love.
Yeah, true. Right. So how does workplace bullying impact not just the individual, but an organization's reputation, legal risk, talent, and even the bottom line?
Yeah. You see, we all have to compile what we call risk registers in the risk space, and that will say, these are our top 10 risks, and this is how we're going to manage them. And each one's got a RAG status, a red, amber, green. And I think it's very important to note that often the human factor isn't very much covered there. There aren't metrics that say how many people reported complaints, what was done about it, what corrective action, was there consequence management or not. So I think these are very, very important conversations that need to be had. And I think it's also very important for us as, you know, leaders, professionals within the space, to also, if we are in positions of power, you know, it's more than just a seat at the table. For me, it should be your opportunity to change and impact spaces so that it gets better for the next generation.
Yeah. What makes your mentorship different from therapy, counseling, or a typical support group?
Yeah, definitely not a therapist, but I have learned a lot in terms of how to regulate our brains, certainly. The service that I'm offering is very much something that is niche at this point. It is a strategy to help you to survive within a toxic workplace, because we know that if you have to leave tomorrow, there's a good chance you'll be at home for 6 months, 12 months. With bills to pay, we know that's not a realistic option, I think, for anyone. So this session, it's called Chess, and it's aimed at helping women to navigate difficult workspaces, to help you to stay there for as long as you can while you quietly work on an exit strategy, because that appears to be the safest way to do it, is to do what you need to at work, be compliant. There's a whole playbook that I've got written out, and you will get that as part of your first lesson. And just to be able to make sure that you as a woman, you know, that your company plays within the rules. You may be so horrified when you find out some of the names of the companies that are revealed to me where, they forget that they're part of the law. They forget that they will be held accountable. If you are found guilty of any form of harassment, bullying, and the company does not put safeguards in place, eventually they will be legally liable. But the legal part is one, but it's a financial. But the greater risk these days is the fact that we're all on social media, and we've seen of recent commissions and that sort of thing that voice recordings, video recordings are going viral. So I just want to say out there to all the workplace bullies who are taking advantage, misusing power, always ask yourself this reputational question. If your conversations with people that you obviously know that you're not treating them well, you're not speaking to them with respect, you are, demeaning them, always ask yourself this test and say, if this video with this person had to go viral on TikTok tomorrow or on Twitter, how would I feel? And I think that should really guide you in terms of the fact that whatever it is you need to do from a work perspective, if you need to course correct someone, if you need to help them along deliverables, do that. Don't demean, humiliate, make people feel like they should not be in that role. It takes a long time for many of us women to build up our self-confidence, to feel like we belong in a particular organization. And it's not always about chasing promotions and titles. I speak for myself. Sometimes it's just being within an environment where your nervous system feels calm. You're around colleagues that respect you, and you're able to do work that is meaningful. And if people, mistreat you and don't treat you well, that experience is quite dehumanizing. So that's really the message I want to put out there, is that if you are listening to this and you're struggling with a bully at work, please book one of my sessions. I don't offer too many, but often one is enough to kind of help you get on the path of how do you prolong the employment relationship. Fighting right out with the employer is a no-no. Refusing to do your work just to prove a point will get you into even more trouble. But there are some really, I want to say, well-tested theories and practical steps that you can take to just protect your peace a little bit more, if I could explain it like that.
Now, according to the legislation, what are the key documentation and legal strategies you teach women to protect themselves within South African employment laws?
Yes. Guys, please, we all use ChatGPT and Claude. Let's not lie to ourselves. A great start would be for you to upload your employment contract that you would have signed. Ask them to break it down for you. Make sure you completely understand what it is you have signed, because that is where your employment relationship starts. That's where everything kicks off from that point. It's the Labor Relations Act, and also have a copy of the Code of Good Practice Act, probably two of the biggest ones in South Africa. If you read that, it isn't even very long. You can download it on the internet as well from the various institutions. I always say that sometimes we don't give our gut feeling or that funny feeling inside of us enough voice. But I can safely say that when you start to feel that knot in your tummy, it's hard to get out of bed to go to work, you dread it, and people's behaviors shift, I would say that would be my first sort of hint, nudge, that something has happened, that you could have spoken up about something, you could have, not gone along with the flow, and now there's this kind of shift towards you, and it's very different to when you joined. And I think the day you have that is the day that you need to be buying a notebook and starting to trend. Because remember, it's not about proving one incident. It's about proving, you walked into the office, no one greeted you. So the tone, the energy in the office is not feeling good. You suddenly get excluded from meetings. You suddenly are excluded from emails. You're being told what to do. Your expertise and your knowledge is not really something that's the forefront of where it should be. So I think these are very subtle signs. A lot of us would miss them, especially if you're in corporate for the very first time. You'd miss them and just think, oh, my boss is having a bad day, or, you'd find some excuse. But I think if you start to feel that one or two times, don't let it go, and that's where my sessions come in, is to, like you said, nip it in the bud. But let's do it in a very sweet, professional, and most importantly, in a legal way.
Yeah. Kovini, what are your contact details in case some of our listeners would like to access your advice?
Yes, please. It is bookings@kovinimoodley.co.za. And then you can also just follow on LinkedIn and my LinkedIn newsletter. And I often talk about this a lot. I talk about the scourge of corporate bullying that is happening, that we all are silent about, that it's swept under the carpet. And I'm sure many people that are listening to this are just resonating and going, yeah, seen that, done that. I think it's really something that I want to lend my voice to in 2026. Women's Day has just passed, and I think I've been thinking a long time over what can I bring to the market that is absolutely needed given these economic times.
Yeah. Thank you once again for having joined us tonight. Our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, was anti-bullying and how it impacts productivity in South Africa and beyond. Kovini, have a good night.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. This is Channel Africa.